Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. Well, here we are in September 1st, and our block today is negative space star that finishes at 12 inches. Here is what it looks like. It's very simple. This is the negative space makes the star, and then some of the other ones, the positive space makes the star. Here are 4 blocks put together. And the instructions I'm going to give you, the cutting instructions, will make 2 reversed blocks. So if it makes this brown block, it'll make one like this, and the other brown one will be the star. We have squares and flying geese units in this block. Patch A is a 3-inch finished square. We cut 3.5-inch squares. And we need 4 patches of the background and 4 patches of the accent fabric. These are the 4 squares in the outer corners. This section here is for the flying geese. I'm going to skip that for now and go down here. Patch D is a 6-inch finished square. We cut 6.5-inch squares, and we need 1 of the accent and 1 of the background fabric. And of course, this is the big center square. For the flying geese, we have 2 choices, actually 3 choices. Since this is such a simple block to make, I'm going to take this opportunity to describe and tell you what patches are and how you piece patches and how you piece flying geese 4 at a time and how you piece the flying geese cut with the AccuQuilt. I think several videos ago I told you about electric quilt is what I use to prepare these instructions, and these printouts here I add to them, but these printouts here show you the size of the square to cut and how many patches you need. If you go back to the beginning of quilt making, it was called patchwork quilting. It's still patchwork quilting, but what they would do is cut out patches, sew them together, and then make a quilt. A patch is, I define it as the simplest part of the fabric cutting. So here you simply cut a square. That's a simple part. For the quarter square triangle, which is in the flying geese, we'll cut a square, then we cut it in half twice on the diagonal, and you get 4 patches. Each of the patches is a triangle. So out of 1 large square, you get 4 smaller triangles. The half square triangle is the same way, except you cut a square and then you cut it in half once on the diagonal for 2 patches. Now we'll look at the flying geese patches. Patch B is for the goose part of the flying geese, and that's the big triangle in the center. We'll cut 7.25-inch square and cut it in half on the diagonal twice, and we'll get 4 patches. The patches will be triangles. We'll need 4 patches of the background and 4 patches of the accent fabric. When we use the 4 at a time flying geese method, we need just a square. So we'll cut the square the same size, 7.25 inches, but we will not subcut it. You can cut your patches, or you can cut your square and use the 4 at a time method. And for AccuQuilt, you'll be cutting patches, and I'll demonstrate that too. Patch C is the sky part of the flying geese. That's the 2 smaller triangles in the corner. We'll cut 3 7/8-inch squares, cut it in half once on the diagonal, and we'll have 2 patches, 2 triangle patches. For the flying geese, we'll need 8 patches of the accent and 8 patches of the background. Or if we're using the 4 at a time method, we'll need 4 squares of each. That means the 3 7/8-inch squares. We do not cut them into patches. So let's look at a demonstration. Here is patch B, and I have 1 each of the background and the accent fabric. We're going to cut this into patches, and this other one we're going to use the 4 at a time method. So let's cut our patches first. And this is the patch B, so we cut it in half twice on the diagonal. Cut it once this way. When I'm cutting pieces of fabric like this where you make 1 cut and then you want to make another cut, this is how I lift up the ruler so I won't disturb the fabric once it's cut. I'll hold my hand over here, and then I'll grab the other end of this ruler with my fingers and lift it up. It's like a lever. So I'm lifting it and I can just move it out of the way. And I have not disturbed the fabric. And then I'm going to put it down almost the same way. This is the lever down here. So I'm putting it on the corner. And then I'm looking up here to see where I need to pivot this to put it on this corner. And then you look, make sure it's on the corner, and then you'll cut. And here are your flying geese, the goose portion of the flying geese. And we have 4 of them. That's the 4 patches you need. So let's put these on the side right now. Now I'll take these and cut these into patches. These are the accent fabrics. I'm going to stack them all up and cut them all at once. You have to make sure you stack these up very carefully because you're going to cut all of them at once. And this one you cut in half once on the diagonal. So the same way, you lay the ruler down and cut once on the diagonal. So now you have your 8 patches. Let's look back on here and see. For the goose portion, we had our 4 patches, and we need 4 patches of each, but we're just doing one set right now. And for the sky portion, you need 8 patches. So here we have 4 patches here and 4 patches here. At this point, you're done cutting if you want to use patches. And you'll lay this like here, like this, and like this. And you'll sew this together, and there's your flying geese unit. To do this, you flip it over and you match this bottom part and the side. You'll stitch a 1/4 inch along here. And you'll press your seams open. Then you'll come on this side and do the same thing. Fold it over, match the bottom part and the side, stitch a 1/4 inch, and then press your seams open. I've stitched one side of all the flying geese and pressed the seams open. This nub up here, I'm going to cut off even with the top, even across this way. So do that for all of your flying geese units. Next, I'm going to stitch this side. We'll put our half square triangle like this, flip it over, match the bottom and the sides, and stitch a 1/4 inch. And here are our finished flying geese units by sewing patches. There are some nubs you need to cut off, this other one at the top, and the 2 here on the corners. And be sure you always cut off the nubs because they get in the way when you're trying to piece your other pieces onto them. So I'll do that to all of these. Now, if we look at, we have the same size square, large square for the geese portion, and we have the same size for the sky portion. They were both cut with the same size. The only difference is we did not subcut these. We're leaving the goose square and the sky squares. We have 1 square for the goose and we have 4 squares for the sky. Now here's a tutorial I've done that shows how to do flying geese 4 at a time. For flying geese 4 at a time, you need 1 large square and 4 small squares. The large square is the geese part of the flying geese, and the small squares are the sky part of the flying geese. On the back of each of the small squares, draw a diagonal line. Place 2 of the small squares like this on the large square, right sides together. You line up these edges and make sure these lines line up. Then you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch on both sides of that drawn line. Here are the 2 stitching lines on either side of the marked line, and now we cut it in half on the marked line. Now you'll open these up and press your seams open on both sides. Cut off the nubs. Now you'll place another square in this corner. Here's your diagonal line, and stitch on either side of the diagonal line. And do that for both of these. When you're stitching, your stitches should come out or start right at this point, this intersection here, this 90-degree angle. Cut this in half on the diagonal line, and you have these two. Press your seams open and cut off your nubs. And do the same for this one. 4 flying geese. Now we have our flying geese units finished from the 4 at a time flying geese. And these are the flying geese we need to complete both blocks. Next, I'm going to show you how to use the AccuQuilt and how to cut them and how to piece them, the flying geese units. For this block, I have the 3" by 6" finished flying geese die. If you purchased the AccuQuilt Go Big Electric, this die came with that machine. And you can buy it separately if you want, but it only makes the one size, the 3 by 6 finished. I always put the AccuQuilt dies here. And what you look for is, for the goose unit, it's a 6" finished quarter square triangle. And these 2 dies will give you that shape. Up here is the die number for this die that I just showed you. If you don't have that die, these are the 2 dies that will cut this shape for the goose. And here are the dies that will cut this shape for the sky. The goose will always be a quarter square triangle, and the sky will always be a half square triangle. I'm going to make 2 flying geese, so I need 2 pieces of fabric. If you look at the die, you have the goose and you have your 2 sky pieces. So I'm going to put, this is the light one and this is the dark one, and they'll be reversed once I make them. So I'm going to go and cut this. I meant to tell you, this piece of fabric is about 4" by 11.5 inches. So I'll take the excess off. And now we have our flying geese pieces. So this one goes like this. And here's the sky portion. And this. There's your 2 reversed flying geese. You'll need 4 pieces of the background and 4 pieces of the accent fabric. 4.5 inches by 11 inches. And that will get you your 8 flying geese units. Now to piece the flying geese, it's exactly the same way you piece if you have patches. Flip this over. The points are cut off so you can match the cutoffs, you can match the bottom, and this across here. And part of this matches the top. Stitch your 1/4 inch and press the seams open. And here are the 2 sewn and pressed. And with AccuQuilt, you have no nubs to cut off. Now do the second side the same way. Stitch 1/4 inch and press your seams open. Here are the 2 finished flying geese units from AccuQuilt, and we won't be using these in these 2 blocks. So now, as far as completing this block, we've already done step 1. You've chosen your method to make the flying geese, and you'll make 2 sets of 4 flying geese. We're just going to look at the diagram and put the blocks together. Now to put the block together, we're going to start with the negative space star, the light colored star. So we use the background big square. And then we look for the flying geese units where the sky is light, and we put them like this because the sky portion will make the star points. And now we fill in with our accent fabric squares in the corners. So here's our first block. To piece this, you piece the units together in the top row, the middle row, and the bottom row. Press your seams open, then stitch the rows together to finish this block. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.